Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the Lehigh County Authority Board of Director meeting. Today is Monday, May 12, 2025. The meeting being held in the hybrid fashion, either live in person or by phone or in the meeting. Lisa, would you please go to the roll call of the Board of Director, please?
Roll call of the board, Amir Kamili,
Here.
Jeff Morgan. Here. Ted Lyons.
Here.
Linda Rosenfeld. Here. Norma Cusick.
Here.
Sean Ziller.
I'm here.
Mark Ramus.
Here.
Peter Dent.
Here.
All right, we have 8 board members present, so you have a
Right.
quorum.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
The package for this meeting was mail or email to the board of directors. If you did not receive them, please talk to Lisa about it. And also was posted on the website. Reviewing the agenda, any changes to the agenda or any need for the executive session, Lisa?
Today, we have no changes and no executive sessions.
Great, thank you, appreciate that. Let's move to the approval of the last meeting. Linda, would you please?
I move that the minutes be approved.
Second.
Moved by Linda and second by Jeff. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Since I was not here at last meeting.
Aye.
I'll abstain as well since I was not there last week. This is Sean.
Any other? Any public comment on the items which is not on the agenda?
No, thank you, Amir.
Yep, no, thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer and Brian, I appreciate that. Moving on the action items, there is a discussion on the regional sewer capacity and wet weather planning, Regional Act 537 plan.
Yeah, so we have a brief presentation to go over. Most of the board has seen most of this presentation already, but we wanted to just do a kind of a quick stop and share where we are with the Act 537 plan because it is now out in the public view for review by the municipal planning commissions and shortly for the public comment period. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and Phil DePoe and I will sort of tag team a little bit to go through it. Peter, I know you're new to our board, but you saw some of this when you came to our open house meeting.
Yes.
So it should be fairly familiar material for everyone. Phil, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. I'll kick it off and I'll turn it over to you a little bit then. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to talk about the 537, where it sits right now and what the next steps are between now and basically mid-October. And then we'll go into what DEP will do with it after that. So this is a new slide. You haven't seen this one. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, there was a presentation where we talked about the authorizations that were out there for the 537. And then I'll get into each one of these shortly. But again, this dates back to August of 19 is when this started. When my role started, it actually started, EPA got involved in 2007. But DEP got a hold of it in August of 19, and it's been nonstop since then. There's been 7 main consultants involved, all doing different items in parallel. Some have been completed, a couple years ago. Some are still outstanding. So the ones that are continuing, there's 2 main ones that are there's not much to do right now because it's in the municipal hands. But again, Arrow was the firm that completed the interim plan and the Truck to Town 537, and then they did this one. So this is the 3rd one that they've been involved with. And their job again was just to compile all the material and put it into a package that DEP will accept. That was Arrow's role. And again, they're gonna hang around until DEP accepts it. That's Arrow's role. Salzman Hughes, that was Liesel's main consultant, if you will, for this. They helped create the 10-page draft IMA term sheet. They haven't been involved since that was created, and there are negotiations that should occur over the next couple of years. They'll be ready to help. So again, those are the two that are, I guess you could say continuing. Kleinfelder, again, they were the main plant, Klein's Island consultant. So again, just to remind everyone, Kleinfelder's role was to, which is not even shown here, but again, they have designed the treatment upgrade at Klein's Island for wet weather, going from 87 to 90 currently to 100. So that's been designed. It's at permit stage with DEP. So again, we're stopping at 100 MGD. We have plans to go beyond 100 MGD. That's pending DEP's direction. So we're going to keep Kleinfelder on hold for anything above 100 MGD. But again, they're going to be involved, for the next couple of years with the 100 MGD project that's in design permit stage right now. That's Kleinfelder. The four there, they say ending in quotes. Again, they're going to be involved, but the main authorizations are ending, if you will. Arcadis, they were involved throughout the entire process. They have a selection of solution phase that can be ended since we've submitted it to the planning commissions. And they're just about wrapped up with again, we wanted to parallel from basically the water plant down to Klein's Island, and DEP said, hold off with that topic. But again, they were authorized to perform a full alignment, all the geotech, all that's been done. I'm waiting submission for the final report from Arcadis for the we're called the KRI, the Catch Relief Interceptor. So that's Arcadis. Raftellus, they did all the financials related to the plan. If there's questions between now and when DEP approves it, I guess they can be re-engaged. Jacobs pre-treatment plan, that's been completed for over 2 years now. Their role with that plan. I just wanted to point it out there because they would have one of the 7. And then of course AECOM's been sitting on top, behind the scenes guiding where this all goes. And they've really taken a step back ever since DEP said that you better focus on I&I only. So again, AECOM was involved heavily up until about a year ago. So those are the big 7 that were authorized since 2019. And so they're all various stages, as you can see. So we move off of that. If there's any questions, if not.
You got all that? Do you understand exactly what's?
I'll recite it for you in a minute.
Yeah, a lot to keep track of in parallel, but it was done, so.
And within our Act 537 plan, we have a org chart that shows each of the consultants and what their roles are, how it sort of fits together. Just sort of put it here in a list format.
And I guess just a little commentary too, the plan, the checklist doesn't do it justice, all the work that's been done. We'll put it that way. I'll turn it back to you, Lisa, since some of the stuff you've already.
Okay, yeah, I'll kind of go through some of these slides fairly quickly because you've seen them before, but they're part of our public presentation that we give, not only in our open house events that we did in October, but also right now we're going through a round of municipal planning commission reviews and just sharing the message that we have been working on this for a very long time. So the time is now to get this plan together, get it submitted, and start doing the projects and doing the work. Recognizing that some components of the plant are almost 100 years old. I like this picture because it shows the rock media trickling filters at Klein's Island, which were installed in 1928. most of the components of the system were installed through the 1920s through the 1980s. So significant investment in the regional system hasn't happened for almost 50 years. So it's time to reinvest and get our plan to DEP for approval. Phil, just jump in wherever you want to. Okay, I'll just keep going until you do that. The KISS, we call it the KISS, Klein's Island Sewer System, KISS for short. Service area covers 15 municipalities. I think we've talked about these before, the different relationships that we have with them. But recognizing that because it's 15 municipalities and it is a municipal plan, that's why it's taking this long to coordinate a plan that all 15 municipalities can get behind and hopefully approve in the next few months.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. Just a reminder, there's the two authorities, LCA and Conflict Whitehall, do not need to formally pass a resolution. We both did in 2020 for the interim plan, but we don't technically need to. I just want to let you know that. And then just one more thing, why all 15? It's because, again, the problem we're trying to rectify with this 537 is a violation at Klein's Island. So anyone who uses Klein's Island must adopt this plan in order to get that violation cleared. That's one way to think about it. Again, just the people that use the facility within the townships. So anyone outside of the service area doesn't impact them.
So you can see on this map, the 15 municipalities are all covered by the Klein's Island sewer system, but certain, as Phil was saying, certain municipalities have more or less coverage. So you can see City of Allentown, for example, is fully covered by the KISS system, but Weisenberg and Low Hill just have these little bits and pieces of the townships that are covered by the system. So when we've spoken with Low Hill or Weisenberg Township, we're trying to be very clear that this 537 plan only covers the small portion that's part of the KISS. So they have the rest of their rural-based townships that have on-lot systems or other small package plants that's covered by their own separate 537 plan. This 537 plan is restricted to the shape on the map right here.
And then the last thing is, again, this was the DEP chosen mechanism to address the violation. So we didn't choose this mechanism, DEP did.
So you can see it's a large system. We're serving about 270,000 people with sewer service, 32 million gallons per day of wastewater treated, about 1,000 miles of pipe. So big system, a lot of components to address. The major system challenges, I think this board is well aware of what we're trying to address. The aging infrastructure is kind of the key driver or root cause issue. Of all the leakage that we need to get out of the system, it's from rainwater that gets in through the cracks and the manholes and other aging components of the system. But we also have a capacity issue. Some of the pipes are too small for the future growth that's going to happen or growth that has already happened. And that creates some challenges for new connections, capacity for new connections. And of course, the regulatory oversight that Phil's been really focused on, trying to meet DEP's requirements for a plan that will meet their needs and allow us to move forward. So this is a picture. Picture's worth 1,000 words, I think, sometimes more than that. This manhole is located right along the Lehigh Creek in Allentown, kind of where South Whitehall and Allentown meet. It looks like it's sunny, but it's also maybe 8 hours after a major storm. So you can see the creek is pretty high and we've got untreated sewage busting out the side of that manhole box. And that's something that does occur throughout the system on occasion when it rains, and that's the problem, one of the major problems we're trying to solve. So we've got inflow and infiltration, sending a very large quantity of water to the system or to the treatment plant, more than the treatment plant can handle. And even when it's not raining, this is an important piece of the puzzle. Even when it's not raining, nearly 10 million gallons of groundwater is getting into the pipe every day. Because the pipes are buried and allowing groundwater in is taking up some capacity in the system that we want to recover through these sewer rehab programs.
And just to reiterate too, that it's all about groundwater. Groundwater is why we got in trouble. The groundwater was so high, it continued to rain, so that's why the flows were elevated. So the groundwater is low. You know, there's still issues with the sizing, but groundwater drives the conversation.
You can see on this graph, I like to show this graph because I've had 2018 and 2019 wet period that we had. What was that was the period that got us into the Chapter 94 violation. And on this graph, you see the blue bars are a 12-month cumulative precipitation over this 2-3 year time period with a peak in mid 2019. And then the orange line is a 12-month rolling average of sewage flows to Klein's Island. And you can see it's almost a perfect match. When we have a lot of rain, the flows go up, and when we don't have as much rain, the flows go down. But it's this period right here where that orange line on a somewhat sustained period was flowing over 40 million gallons per day, where we violated the permit for Klein's Island. And that's what created the regulatory framework for us to be in this situation, to be doing a Regional Act 537 plan. So Phil mentioned we have been working at this as a region since 2007, when EPA placed the administrative orders on the system, but it's gone through a couple iterations of regulatory oversight from EPA back to DEP, and then the Chapter 94 violation that happened in 2019. So since 2019, it's been a really sustained effort to work with DEP and bring this Regional Act 537 plan into being. And in our most recent iteration of this with DEP, we committed to delivering this regional plan to DEP in 2025. So that's what we're doing.
Comment.
Yeah.
Could you please explain one more time?
Yeah.
The relationship between EPA and DP
Sure.
in terms of the 537?
Yes. I think the relationship almost in a way doesn't exist. So we're regulated by the state, by DEP, and we ended up in this administrative order period because of the sustained or the history of overflows at Klein's Island. And my understanding was that DEP actually asked EPA for some enforcement help. And that's why we ended up in the administrative order. But at some point in time, EPA got the picture that this region is working together and we are going to solve our problems. And so they took a step back, they lifted the administrative orders and said, DEP, you have enforcement rights, do your thing.
This is EPA Office of Water, OWA.
The clean water side of things. The Office of Water manages drinking water, and then the clean water side is the wastewater side.
Okay.
And Region 3, I believe,
Yeah.
too.
I filled up. Yeah.
EPA doesn't have any interactions with us directly, but I know DEP and EPA talk. But EPA does not interact with us as it relates to this topic, just with the entry for the PTO.
No, I realize that. I was for Pete's sake, because you had mentioned EPA and I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, if we were a system that had gross violations and a lot more problems than we currently have, EPA would be more involved and get involved with consent orders or consent decrees, those kinds of things. But the system is not performing at that level that would require it.
My familiarity with it is generally that, in broad terms, generally EPA sets the rules and laws and, limits throughout the country, and then really leaves it up to the states for most of the enforcement actions and that type of thing.
Yeah. And there are some communities that have EPA consent decrees or consent orders. They're really problem systems or combined systems where it's stormwater and sanitary together, and the EPA is really trying to get those situations corrected. But in our case, I think our performance is such that it fits at the state level. So just a little bit, I don't know that we presented this recently. Thought it would be important to show a little bit of the engineering that went into putting this plan together. This map is a map of the KISS system. Might be a little hard to see, but these yellow circles that show throughout the map, these are locations of flow monitoring, meter locations that we had in place in 2020,
2021.
21. And then, Phil, do you want to just talk about what we did here and the modeling piece?
Yeah, sure. So the original model was, the city created a model back in the 2010s, and LCA created a model, and then they were separate, and then they were joined together in the mid 2010s. And that was used for the AO planning. And then again, so in 2021, we had to put in more meters, some of the locations from the past. But we put in about 70 temporary meters in strategic locations to make sure we caught the, all the players. And you have to remember, there's about, there's technically 35 permanent meters in the system. And we couldn't use all of them. So it was a combination of temporary and permanent meters for the data inputs into the model. So that's how the model was physically created. And of course, rainwater, much of that's a rainwater slide. There's like 25 rain gauge locations. So it's about 100 meters, 25 rain gauges. That was the input into the model. Then, of course, everyone's flow data, projections and all that. So that's how the model is created.
And then one of the outputs from that metering effort were these heat maps. This is just one of several heat maps that were created to show different types of leakage into the system and the leakage characteristics in the sub basins or the sewer sheds that were monitored. So in this particular heat map, we've got areas that are green, which are generally good. We've got, yellow and orange, which are still generally okay, passing grade. And then we have some areas that are pink and red, which are indicating higher levels of rain-derived inflow and infiltration. So this level of granularity, and if we get down deeper into the map at a lower or a higher resolution, we have more data as well. That gives each community a sense of where they need to be focusing on their I&I or sewer rehab programs.
And there's two things I want us to say there. Yes, this is a high level, high level. It's up to every individual township municipality and their engineer to find the sources. This is a guide as to where generally where it is. The challenge is okay, we know basin, what street in the basin, what neighborhood in the basin. That's the challenge that is going to be a challenge for years to come. Is trying to find, you could just spend money to spend money, but that's not prudent. You got to find it, and that's the challenge. Or the flip to that is, well, you can't find it in a neighborhood. Well, you have to do the entire neighborhood, right? Because if you don't do the entire neighborhood, it's just going to find the next part downstream. So you're pushing water around. That's the ongoing challenge.
So we did this metering and modeling exercise, got this great data on where the leakage is coming from. But our original approach to this Act 537 plan was to look long-term at all of the facilities that would be needed and how to address flows that are expected to come into the system through the year 2050. So we had this long-term view that we were trying to incorporate, and we had lots of alternatives to look at, but we had two main alternatives. One was to upgrade the pre-treatment plant in Vogelsville to a full treatment facility and essentially divert flow out of the KISS system by treating it fully at the pre-treatment plant. The other main alternative was to upgrade what we have, including Klein's Island and the interceptors and all of that. And based on both the permitting regulatory components of that work, as well as cost, the region generally got comfortable saying we need to fix what we have and focus on what we have. Upgrading the pre-treatment plant to full treatment might be something we can look at in the future, but it doesn't make sense from a permitting standpoint or from a cost standpoint to do that project. So upgrading the existing infrastructure includes upgrades to Klein's Island to handle the peak flows, some of the projects that Phil already mentioned. Upgrading the interceptors, the KISS Relief Interceptor, the Western Lehigh Interceptor, addressing pretreatment needs separately for the industries that are using that facility. But really the focus of the plan in the near term is on reducing I&I, getting the leakage out of the system. So we did a lot of engineering to get to that red box that says we need to focus on reducing I&I as the first main component of the plan. So when we rolled this out to the community a year or so ago, maybe longer, we were talking about a plan that was $600 million. I think maybe we recall talking about that big number. Well, that $600 million was a 10-year plan of all of the projects that I just mentioned, plus a major upgrade to the pretreatment plant. We've since taken the pretreatment plant out of this plan because it is now a more focused discussion we're having with the industries. And so it's really not part of this plan anymore. The remaining projects are, $100 million or so for the sewer rehab programs to be handled by the municipalities. And then the major infrastructure pieces, Klein's Island, the Kiss Relief Interceptor, and the Western Lehigh Interceptor. That's the 10-year scope. And then more recently, in the last 6 or 8 months, DEP has really provided very clear guidance that they would prefer to see a narrower plan focused on leakage removal and a 5-year time horizon. So we're still showing this plan because these are the projects we think need to happen. But what's in the plan itself, what we're presenting to DEP, is a narrower 5-year plan. And that brings the cost down because some of those bigger projects are further out in the future. And the current 5-year plan is in the $120 to $135 million range, really focused heavily on sewer rehab programs and Klein's Island upgrades.
I have a question.
Go for it.
DEP is in the driver's seat here apparently because they're approving or changing these plans. And who is DEP? Where are they? Do they live here? And we live here and we're paying for this. DEP is more or less orchestrating this. Are they, quite frankly, do they know what they're doing?
Yeah. Yes.
Their collaboration on these?
Yes. We've met with DEP, Phil, what, 3 times a year through this whole process, something like that?
At least 10 times.
Over the last 5 years. Yeah. The Wilkes-Barre office is our regional headquarters in Northeast District. And the director of the Northeast District is very familiar with LCA and our system, has been very helpful in conversations with development type questions, those sorts of things. And then the head, what is Scott's title?
Chief of Planning.
Chief of Planning. He's been the primary person that we've been talking with in terms of what the shape and scope of our plan is and giving us very clear direction of what he's looking for. So they're local folks. There's also a woman who lives in Allentown but works for the Wilkes-Barre office who's been collaborating with us on public outreach and those kinds of things as well.
So we feel good about DEP's input into this and we agree because we're the ones living with this and paying for it. We feel this is the right direction.
I think that we've had some disagreement with DEP over time, but generally speaking, the first 5 years being focused on I&I makes a ton of sense. What we were concerned about is really getting all of the municipalities on board with some of the longer term expensive projects. We spent a lot of time on that side of it. And so DEP is not saying no to those projects. They're just saying those are future projects. We want to focus on the now. So I think that's been the bulk of the challenges, like translating what we know we need in the future to what we need to present to DEP for right now.
In follow up to Ted's question, how has DEP been or any needs from EPA in terms of getting questions answered or having meetings? Has their response timeliness been adequate or?
I think the response has been adequate. I think they're hesitant to put things in writing, which makes it complicated. So it's verbal guidance. And a follow-up to Ted about, are we comfortable with DEP's stance? We talked to our colleagues throughout the state, and it seems to be a DEP mandate that I is the top of the ballgame.
I understand that. What I'm trying to get at is we live here. This is our system. We pay for it. And we have a governmental agency telling us priorities. And are we spending the right money in the right place for us? That's really the gist of my question.
Yeah, I think we're comfortable with the plan and the projects and the feedback. I think where we've had the most difficulty has been seeing how future growth will be accommodated, because we don't know how DEP is going to manage us moving forward. In 2019, when we had this excursion and we had this Chapter 94 violation, they put the region under a connection management plan. And they said, okay, for the next 5 years, you have this much allowance for new connections. And that goes through the year 2025. And we know that future, the next 5, 10, 15 years, we're going to continue to have growth. And so we don't know 100% how DEP is going to manage new growth after we submit this plan, and trying to get comfortable with the new connection, if there is a new connection management plan, or how they're going to accommodate it. Part of the challenge is because some of the interceptors are too small today, we just know that we need those parallel interceptors to accommodate future growth, as well as, just aging system type, the current flows. But we're not getting approval for those projects now. We're really focused on just the I&I.
So I have a question. So back when the ACO was issued by EPA, I believe that every municipality had to do I&I work on their own. It was kind of an individual that was not like, and then everybody reported to EPA, I believe. I wasn't involved, but I think that's what I'd heard happen. So now we're submitting this plan that we're going to be basically continuing that effort. And since that's the biggest ticket item on the table here, is there the thought that LCA or it's going to be like one big project in a certain drainage area? It's not going to be every municipality doing their own thing again, which I'm not sure how effective that was or what they did. So is there some thought about how that's going to proceed or how that's going to be accomplished?
Yeah, so the plan itself shows 15 individual sewer rehab programs to address each community's needs. How that work actually gets done, the way the plan is written now, it's assumed that each of the municipalities will handle their own work in their own systems. However, we've been having these conversations with the region about the new intermunicipal agreements and how like some concepts around how we could do the work more regionally, creating a regional I&I program. That is difficult to put like commitments to until we know from DEP how they're going to handle new connections. So the tie between I&I removal and new connections is this idea that DEP might say for every gallon of leakage that you remove, you get a gallon of new connections available for growth. And that if they take that approach, which we're not recommending, but if they take that approach, it actually means like a system that has a lot of leakage could potentially get a lot of capacity back, and a system that doesn't have a lot of leakage maybe doesn't have that much opportunity to get capacity back, but it doesn't pair up with where the growth is happening. So that kind of creates the idea that maybe a regional approach would work better. But until we have that feedback from DEP, can't quite put all the details together. It's conceptualized in that intermunicipal agreement that's part of the plan.
Remember, DEP gave us 4.6 million gallons right off the bat. We've only used 2 of that, like 2.1. So there's 2.5 in the bucket, if you will. But again, like Lisa said, it's not in the appropriate spots. Because if it's done in 2020, and different growths happen in different areas, so it's unbalanced. And DP doesn't care about it, all they care about is the bottom line number. They say it's our problem to figure out the imbalance.
Well, I just want to be sure, I'm saying it so many times that we're spending our money that we feel in the right places for us. And does that coincide with where DEP is? Because they're not us.
Right.
And if there's a disagreement, resolve that disagreement.
So I will say one thing, because there's still a lot to work out between the municipalities with those intermunicipal agreements. I will say that this top line number here for municipal sewer rehab programs, the $60 million over the next 5 years, that I believe we have fairly good confidence that the dollars are focused in the right systems. So for example, because they're on the call and they can correct me if I'm wrong, City of Allentown has a pretty sizable chunk of that because they have acknowledged where they have a lot of leakage. And so I think from the standpoint of looking at where the leakage is and where the investment is, those pair up nicely in the plan. Now, how we pay for it in the future, if the municipalities can get together and come up with a regional approach to do that, that would be great. But until we know where DEP is going to land with the connection piece, I think it'll be difficult to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's just a question. For example, if Upper Macungie County said the cost of removing the I&I form is too high, I'm not going to do it. What mechanism do we have? Because they're discharging to our Faisal, right? So what mechanism do we have from DEP to enforce that they do it what they need to be done?
Well, so part of the scope of the new intermunicipal agreement will cover that. The approach that's been contemplated and written into the draft term sheet that's in the agreement or in the Act 537 plan changes our billing process to be flow-based. And the flow-based billing, it will provide some of the incentives. So communities that are growing will pay more over time because they're growing. Communities that have a lot of leakage, they can pay less over time as they get the leakage out. So that's the primary mechanism for that. But then there's also reporting that we're expecting to do to DEP to show which projects we've done and what the flow reductions have been, those kinds of things.
That agreement is really essential.
Yeah.
To enforcing. Users pay for what you use and what you discharge. Okay, thank you.
On the home stretch here. Literally, we've been working on this since 2019. We're all the way in 2025. So a lot of things have happened, a lot of engineering, a lot of public input in 2024. Right now we're in the approval process and then implementation plan thereafter. Phil, you want to talk about this approval process?
Yeah, sure. So we're on the second line right there where it says planning commission review. I actually dropped it off. I physically went to all 15 municipalities plus Copper Whitehall plus the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission and dropped the book off. And because I had a wet signature that they received it. So I got that for DEP. And that starts a 60-day clock for the planning commissions. And this is all in the law. This is just regurgitation of the timeline that's written in law. 60 days for planning commission review. They don't have to comment. If there is no comment, DEP requires a letter saying no comment. So in the interim plan, there's a handful of comments. And in the interim plan, there was 0 public comments. So regarding the public comments, after the 60 days is over, we have to address every comment and then provide a response. And then those responses go into I guess you call it the public comment package, which is a 30-day review. And an LCA will do that for the entire region. So end of June or beginning of July is when I anticipate that going, that process starting. Again, 30 days. And that is the only official time where a response is needed from someone from the public. So we must respond to a comment. And after that 30 days is over, we'll address all the comments, package it up, and give the municipalities the final version, which is the version that will be used for the resolution piece. And that just has to occur after the public comment period. So I'm giving myself, mid-August through the end of September to get 15 resolutions. And then after that, so mid-October roughly is when we're anticipating DEP to get this.
And DEP after that has a couple of steps that they will take. They do an administrative completeness review. So all of the check boxes on their checklist, did we do all the things, get all the signatures, all of those kinds of things. And then after it's deemed administratively complete, they have 4 months to review. They can not request, they can notify us, but they need 2 more months. So it could be up to 6 months for them to review. So maybe this time next year, we'll have a response or an approved plan, we hope. So.
Yeah, with the interim plan we submitted to DEP in September, we didn't get a response we didn't hear from them until April, and they gave us a formal approval letter in June. So it took 9 months. And there was not much to review then. So I anticipate this being more thorough review.
Billy, we're talking about on the dry day, the model has shown that we have about 10 million gallons a day. Roughly. Do we have a goal for ourselves that let's say 3 years from now, if we repeat, put the flow meters and do the modeling where we want to be, and we call it that, we have achieved what we were looking for?
Yeah, it's a challenging one. So what transpired was we asked all the municipalities to provide their source reduction plans in 2022. And in late 2022, they were all loaded into the model. And as of late 2022, the model predicted reduction is about 2 to 3 MGD on baseline. So 10 baseline infiltration, we can get 3 of that. So that sticks in my head as an achievable reduction to get 3 of that 10. And that was as of late 22, theoretical exercise. So again, the INI is never going to be fully removed. This is how much can we get out at a reasonable cost is the problem right now.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. So practically you think about what a reasonable cost, about 30% of that can be removed within.
That's our best guidance right now, about 3 MGD.
That's a complicated question because, there could be an interceptor that needs, 50% reduction or, a lot more than that. It really depends on the drainage area and all of that.
Sure.
Or a pumping station that needs more INI to have available capacity versus just, at the plant, one big number. It's really very
It's all
specific, to each particular pipe.
So a few months ago, the board heard a proposal and, request for authorization for sanitary sewer evaluation work and the additional nighttime weiring and those kinds of projects to really hone in on exactly where the leakage is. And then after the project is done, post rehab monitoring to try to really focus on the areas that need the rehab and then also measuring success of different technologies.
That's right.
Yeah.
Some of the municipalities have a much easier job of measuring. Some are almost impossible job of measuring the reductions. Depends on where you are. Like for example, Lehigh Country, it's almost impossible for them to measure reduction because they tie into our interceptor like 50 times. So there's no way so LCA and Lehigh Country are kind of tied at the hip as it relates to that piece. But some of the obviously the people at the top of the system, there's no one above them. Just one into the municipality. So there's a meter there where they can measure either into the city or another municipality. So again, it's all depending on what municipality you're talking about to get this reduction. To quantify the reduction. Some are a lot easier than others, and that's a challenge. We're going to have a DEP trying to explain that. especially the plant. Sometimes you don't see the reductions at the plant because it all gets, blended in and gets, trying to think of the word, it gets tamped down, or you don't see the reduction at the plant. You gotta look further up. That's sort of the problem we have.
Why wouldn't you see the reduction at the plant?
Well, I'd like to
It's the
think
goal
of it,
here, isn't it, to reduce?
that's the goal at the plant. The problem is, I think of the interceptor system as almost like a highway where it's just always, there's just cars. So there's just so many cars at the highway, and the cars start backing up. And if the plant's here, you're not gonna see any flow reduction because there's so many cars. It's almost, it's hard to quantify just because of the way the geometry of the piping. Near from the water plant down to Klein's Island, that piping is just too small. So it restricts the flow there and it just pushes the flow up. Up further upstream. So my point is that it's hard to quantify reductions at the plant. We're gonna have to go upstream to quantify those reductions.
If you measure every day the flow into the plant.
And then the flow over the plant, if you look at the x-axis over the 25 years, the flows are really not, they're up and down, but not this, not that. They're steady around 32. 32 MGD steady.
10 of which is infiltration.
10 of which is infiltration. And it all bounces on the groundwater. Groundwater's high, holding up 34, 30, 35, and then they come right back down to 32. And if the groundwater's low, they'll go down to 30.
If we eliminate 10 of the, 3 of the 10, it should drop.
That's,
below
yeah,
30.
we should see that. But then you have growth on top of that, right? So that's gonna cancel each other out. So there's a lot of variables at play at once, what makes it challenging to quantify the reductions.
I thought it was interesting when we did the hydraulic modeling, that the model returned figures of, up to like 160 million gallons per day trying to get to the plant during a peak event. But the plant can only receive about 100 or 105
Right.
MGD. So the rest of it's just back up in the pipe, because of the restriction and the bottlenecks in the system. Once we do the interceptor projects and we relieve all those bottlenecks, then you would have a true number of what's flowing to the plant. But that's not going to happen for another 10 years. So over the next 5-ish years, as we're doing all this heavy I&I work, those bottlenecks will still continue to exist and create some of that smoothing out of the flows to the plant.
I'll never live to see the success of this project.
You never know.
So, well, this presentation went a little longer than I think we expected, but it's good conversation, and really now is the time to have the conversations, because when we come back to you in August-ish with a final plan with all the public comments received, and we ask the board for a resolution to approve it, that's almost too late. So the conversations we've had over the last 5 years, and again today, really, really important. Kind of the final comment here is that this is an investment. It's an important investment, and it will be the largest investment our region has made in protecting public health and the environment in our history, in our lifetimes for sure. So we're excited to move forward on it. And we do have a dedicated website, LehighCountySewer.org. So it's not tied to LCA, it's the region's website where the plan is actually currently posted already, and will be the place where people can go to review it and provide public comments. If you'd like to read the full plan, it's there, all 800 pages.
Hi, this is Norma. Can you please repeat that website?
Oh, yes, is that Norma?
Yes, it is.
Yes, the website is LehighCountySewer.org.
Great, thank you.
You bet. That's all we have for that topic.
Any questions, comments from the board members?
Yeah, this is Sean. I would just say, just to add, which I think was pretty well covered by everybody else in the meeting. But, obviously, and this is a compliment toward LCA, but I think it once again is acting as the, no pun intended, as the kind of critical linkage between the municipalities and DEP on this effort. I mean, that's the most concerning point. Most concerning part of this is, at least for me, is the new, new connection piece, and kind of, I know conversations are ongoing, and DEP, presumably provide further guidance. But obviously, the growth we've seen in the valley and in the service area from 2020 to 2025, is gonna be a little bit different than 2025 to 2030. So, I'll be interested to kind of learn more, as certainly, up in North Whitehall where I am, growth is just continuing, and just being thoughtful about that. But once again, kudos to the team over there.
Based on your preliminary discussions so far with the municipalities, do you anticipate any major pushback from any of the municipalities in particular, or things that could be really disruptive to advancing the plan?
I'll see you.
I think from the standpoint of the 537 plan, we've had a meeting with the municipal managers every month for the last 5 years. So they're very well informed, very well engaged in terms of what's in the plan and why it's in the plan. Talking with the planning commissions, they're a little bit more removed from the process, of course. And when we get to the elected officials and the adoption of the resolutions, are even further from the planning process. So I don't see any specific barriers, but I think there's always a gap between like what we know, because we're in it 24/7 in the planning process, and the elected officials who have to make these decisions. So good communication will be important. And Phil and I have offered to be available for any meeting that's out there to try to help with that. We've done quite a few planning commission meetings already. I also want to just take a moment to recognize Brian Chamberlain and Jenny McKenna. The city of Allentown has been a really critical partner in getting this plan pulled together. And, it's a big change for the city in terms of the intermunicipal agreement and how we're doing things. So, having the city's support, and then at city council level, will be really important.
Just one more comment, just to kind of expand on Ted's question. I think in the initial phases of this, the biggest things would be, reducing, the first baby step would be reducing the quantity of overflows, keeping everything in the system, then maybe reducing the number of overflows. And then sometime in the future, who knows, maybe seeing flow reductions at the plant. I think just because, as Phil was saying, because of everything that's happening and how much excess is there, don't even know if it's all even making it to the plant. Well, we know some it's not. And so that's kind of the initial steps to see if things are, and of course the weather helps in that, but the work also makes a difference. Those are sort of the big picture steps to see.
Yeah, I'm
if
just
there's-
going back to Amir's comment, what is success?
Yeah,
How do we tell if
that's
we
where,
spent all this money
yeah,
and
I think that's where you would start at that high level.
what are the
and then-
goals here, and how do we
Yeah,
determine, or have we reached a goal, or we haven't reached a goal?
right.
Any other comment? Question from the board member? Great discussion. Thank you for that. LCA team for putting these things together has been 4 or 5 years coming. And I do recognize we still have a lot of work to do. But I'm 100% sure that we will succeed on this task. Thank you, Phil. Moving to next item on our agenda, which is the Arcadia wastewater treatment plant screening system project. This is the green packet of papers, digital board package, page 9 to 12.
Thank you, Lisa. I'll be a little bit more brief. So this is for construction phase authorization of a project to install mechanical screening equipment at the head of the Arcadia West wastewater treatment plant. For those that don't know where the plant is, you can see it from 78, just past the 863 New Smithville exit. It serves an industrial park in there. Probably about a dozen industries and then a school and a few businesses. The plant has a capacity of about 40,000 gallons per day. It's a sequencing batch reactor, concrete tanks. And this project is intended to solve an operational problem. With the industries connected, we get a lot of industrial wipes and like coarse inorganic debris that while there is a grinder at the influent pump station, which lifts everything up into the SBR tanks. The problem with the grinder is that it grinds up the materials and then they re-knit back together downstream, and they hang up on all the process piping and equipment and floats, instrumentation. So it's been a long pain for operations. So this is intended to resolve that, reduce some operation and maintenance burden at the plant. Similar to what we put in a couple of years ago at our Heidelberg Heights plant, we put in mechanical screen. This one's a little bit different because everything is coming in under pressure. It's pumped from a pump station. So we have to install a screen for each SBR tank. So there's two parallel sequencing batch reactor tanks, and we're going to split the influent force main at the head of these tanks and send the raw wastewater through a screen, one screen dedicated for each tank. So it will operate automatically. It'll discharge the debris into the dewatered debris into a chute, into a waste container that operations can then empty into a dumpster. So we did this project. We advertised it in late March. There was a pre-bid meeting at the site in early April, and we opened bids a couple weeks ago in late April. We got 3 bids, all 3 reputable contractors. One bid was an outlier, as you'll see. But the low bid is from Bloomy Glen Contractors. We're very familiar with Bloomy Glen. They've done a lot of work for us at Klein's Island in our suburban system. They do emergency work for us as needed. So we're very comfortable and confident with that contractor. So their low bid amount was $478,187. We reviewed the bid. The bid is in order. Everything is complete. And I'd like to make a recommendation that the board award the capital project authorization for $578,787, which includes the $478,187 bid from Bloomy Glen for construction, and then construction phase services provided by CHA, formerly known as Dewey Engineering. They did the feasibility study and the design, and they're best suited to provide construction phase assistance out there, which will consist of some part-time inspection, responding to RFIs, a shop drawing review, contract closeout, job meetings, that sort of thing. So with that, I'll entertain any questions.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead, someone else.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. This is Mark. Are these screens going to work off of a DP cell across the screens, or will it be an automatic time sequence that they operate every so often?
The screens will operate every time that there's flow in the force main to that screen. The screen will operate. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, it's based on a solenoid. The dosing of the SBR tanks, it's alternate. You dose one tank, it goes through cycles, and you dose the other tank, and there's different phases. There's a fill cycle, there's an aerate cycle, there's a settle cycle, there's a decant cycle. So it's all PLC controlled. So the screens will be tied into our SCADA system, and they'll operate depending on which SBR tank is dosed.
So is this, how did the bids compare to the estimate for the project?
The estimate for the project was right around 500,000. So actually it's like right between the low bid and the second lowest. They pretty much nailed it. The bid was right in the middle.
Just been seeing some wild bids these days with the T word tariffs.
Yeah, I don't think this one is subject to that. It's US manufactured equipment.
Right.
I don't know where all the components are coming
Right.
from, but you know, the equipment itself is American.
Okay.
Any other question? So we seeking approval, for the, amount of $578,787,000, for, Arcadia wastewater treatment plant influence screening, system.
So
I'll
moved.
make that. I'll second, Sean.
Okay, Jeff made the move and Sean made the second?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Okay, resolution passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
Well,
The next item on the agenda is monthly project updates.
Okay, also wanted to, in case the board was not aware, let you know that Kevin Baker joined in the middle of our actually at the beginning of our presentation. So we have all 9 board members here. Hi, Kevin. So the monthly project update report you have attached to your packet, there's a couple things I wanted to highlight. First of all, in the first section, you may notice that there's only 2 items for the next meeting, and they're both the monthly reports. The next meeting is a week earlier because of the Memorial Day holiday. Our monthly report data actually might not be available in time. So I think we're going to cancel the next meeting and just roll that stuff into June. You'll receive the monthly reports by mail or email. Then under the project update section, part 2 of the report, there are a number of items listed here that are coming up in June and added here to give you a little bit of a preview. One in particular I wanted to highlight is the Buss Acres water system interconnection and PFAS remediation. That'll be in front of the board in June.
design phase.
For design phase, and that is a project that we also hope to be talking with Hemnest about funding, because there's grant funding available for PFAS remediation projects. So that'll be an important one that you'll hear about multiple times as part of that process. And then a number of other new projects that are kicking off in June. Also, there's a section of this report under the heading of wastewater projects, KISS Act 537. Those kind of mirror the authorizations that Phil talked about, just to give you an update of which ones are sort of closing out, or where we are on those various authorizations for getting us to the finish line on the 537 plan. And I think that's kind of it, except to note that under the part 3, the open project list, the main office parking lot expansion is in project closeout phase. It's beautiful. That's my car parked all the way out in the end for the extra steps on a beautiful day. And so we should be in good shape when we have large meetings here, and very successful project, Chuck. Yeah.
And that covers all the items you have on the agenda, is that correct?
Yes.
Great. Solicitor comment.
No comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any public comment? Yes.
Wait, I do have some staff comments.
Oh, okay. Did I miss the staff comment?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry. Staff comment.
Thank you. Just a couple things I already mentioned about the next board meeting being canceled. Also wanted to just give the board an update or a heads up that we're working on new authorization forms. to mirror the authorization levels that were recently approved through the omnibus resolution. We have been working internally on new forms that kind of match that. And so over the next few meetings, as you see the new forms, if they work or don't work, we'll be asking for some feedback from the board on that. Also wanted to highlight that last week was National Drinking Water Awareness Week. And as part of our efforts through the Lehigh Valley Water Suppliers nonprofit organization we have belonged to since the 1980s, we had a few things happen. We were able to award $5,000 worth of scholarships to graduating high school seniors or college students who are pursuing a career in a water-related field, including one young man who was an intern here at LCA last summer. So that was pretty awesome. And then we had the signature event called Hydromania that was held on Thursday last week at Cedar Crest College. Huge kudos to Sue Sampson and a huge number of LCA volunteers who came out to support that event and educate young people about water conservation and watershed protection. And then finally, this week, we have the Pennsylvania section of the American Water Works Association conference, and we have Chris Mon, who's sitting on a panel speaking about our lead program. And again, Sue Sampson will be sitting on a panel talking about crisis communication. So LCA getting out there in those settings as well. And then last but not least, Chuck has an announcement and an introduction to make.
Yes, I'd like to introduce the board to a new project manager in Capital Works. The young man sitting in the back there, Anton Siegman. How's it going? If you'd like to say a few words, Anton, here's your opportunity.
Yeah, my name's Anton. I'm excited to, join the team here. I'm originally from Berks County, just over the line. Got a background in construction and industrial metal fabrication. So excited to enter in a new industry here and do what I can to help move things through. So thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any public comment?
No,
Nope.
thank you.
Thank you, Brian and Jennifer. Board member comment.
I have a question.
Sure.
Have we been in contact with the bond people regarding PFAS?
For the Buss Acres project, that was that's actually a separate issue. It's in our suburban water system. So we have done an evaluation with Invest about our bonds to be sure that we don't run into similar issues for that project. And it seems we're in good shape for that.
But I mean, do we know where the bond people are with contacting
For the Allentown bonds
about
and the
Penvest?
bondholder consent.
So we are still finalizing a solicitation agreement with Goldman Sachs, as we talked about at the last meeting. Well, I believe that the true launch date would be June 12th is what I remember on the schedule. We're to do, now that's to officially go out there, so you need an EMA posting.
Correct.
You also need a preliminary discussion with some of the big bondholders so that they know what kind of language you're coming out with. But more importantly, Penvest now needs to see what we're proposing so that they're in total agreement with it, and we will not go through this again.
And what I'll add to that is the team, which includes Ed and the folks from Goldman Sachs, and then also bond counsel Tim Hortzman, myself, and Chris Gibbons. We meet on a weekly basis. There is a schedule that's been developed. And we're at the stage where Ed just documented where the language amongst those on that call is getting crystallized and finalized. And then as Ed appropriately noted, then we go to Penvest, get their sign off, because we don't want to send that out and have to now change the language, right? Get their sign off. and then it hits the street, so to speak. And then, hopefully that process will go smoothly and be able to report back.
I just wasn't sure when it would hit the streets, kind of thing.
Yeah, first and foremost is, in fact, we were talking about it when you were coming in. We were finalizing that solicitation agreement and also the language. And actually, we'll have a call Thursday to know where we are.
I have a question, and maybe I didn't catch this when we had the discussion at the last meeting, but based on what you just said. So is this only an issue for Penvest projects in the Allentown division?
That is correct.
So any suburban projects, they can go through Penvest and that's not an issue for the organization?
That is correct.
I did not catch that when we had the discussion.
Yeah,
last
so
time.
the distinguishing factor is the indenture language, okay?
But that would-
So you've got a city indenture, which had certain requirements and restrictions as it related to subordinated debt, okay?
Right.
And those did not work overly friendly with, it's kind of a combination of Penvest and the federal funding
Yes, right, that
that
part.
was
I get.
coming through,
Yes,
okay?
yeah.
The suburban indenture is a completely separate indenture, doesn't have that language.
Okay.
There's other don't get me wrong, there's other hoops to go through, but it doesn't
Right.
have that language,
Okay.
which was problematic for Penvest.
Okay, well, that's good.
So as an add-on too, as well, while we're talking about the bond consent, as we were pursuing the language of the new indenture, we also added the capability or added to it, just in case we want to go out and reach out to WIFIA for other funding, we're making it amenable for that program too. So we can do this once.
Thank you. Any other question, any other comment from the board member?
Just one, again, just, it may have been from last time, I don't recall, but what is the original source of that funding for the Penvest? You know, just as we look at the news and all the gyrations that are going on in Washington these days. Where is that money? What is the federal source exactly? What?
Go ahead.
The specific funding that we're going after for grants for the lead program and PFAS projects come through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. But the IIJA, not the Inflation Reduction Act. It's the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And but annually through EPA, there's an appropriation of money for the state revolving funds that fund other programs that Penvest administers. So it's always a mix of federal and state funds through Penvest. It just depends on how much and what the mix is, which particular program.
It's Chinese pension funds.
The whole idea of the Penvest program is that it's a revolving fund. And so the more grants they give out, the less money comes back in payments to be offered for other projects. So the grant money is great while it's available, but the revolving fund is like, continues the program.
Thank you.
Any other comment from the board? No. Just a comment from myself. I want to thank all of the board members providing the feedback to Jeff and myself. We collected all the feedback, we consolidated them, so hopefully soon we will have a meeting on your calendar to review your feedback and try to see what is the next step for us to take. So thank you for your time providing the feedback. With that, I think the meeting comes to an end. You guys have a great week.
Thanks, everyone.